there's nothing more entertaining to the media than climate change. Isn't this just further proof that climate action is just a euphemism for the transfer of wealth, David?
I think it is very much so, and it also is very much in the interests of the Communist Chinese. Beijing is fascinated by this because Beijing knows they can make all the promises that they want to make. They never honour their promises if it doesn't suit them. Just look at how they promised not to militarise the South China Sea. And they are obviously laughing all the way to the bank as Western countries destroy themselves, particularly our country here, which is so small in terms of emissions, apart from, of course, the politicians who have been emitting enormous amounts over the last few weeks in their international travel. But we're so small, even if we close the whole country down, as the chief scientist admitted on one occasion, we couldn't make any impact whatsoever on the world temperature. And the politicians have decided, they're obsessed with this, they've decided that they're going to effectively run the country down. I'm sure they must understand that what they're doing will result in terrible consequences for the country.
Well, you're spot on, David, but as always, let's talk about the eco-millionaires back here in Australia. These people are benefiting from government subsidies in renewables. David, investors in these unproven, extortionate green schemes are advocating for government policies that will make them richer but the country poorer. Will these people ever admit that they're profiteering from something that ordinary Australians simply can't afford?
You're absolutely right. This is not the free market. These are people who are being drones. They are hanging off the wealth of the country, the taxpayers' funds of the country. Their profiting is not from business. Their profiting is from taking money from the taxpayers of Australia. This will result in an awful calamity for the country if it's allowed to go ahead. We can see that now with what's going to happen to the prices of energy, and it's already happening. We can see how businesses are being paid or encouraged not to use the electricity supply so they can keep it going to the houses and apartments of everybody else, so that we won't notice that what's happening is what is left of our manufacturing industry is shortly going to disappear, move offshore, because the governments are destroying.
Well, the sanctimonious green investors are the real villains in this situation for contributing to the destruction of our previously reliable energy industry. Yet these people, they're constantly trying to portray Australia as the worst offender. You wrote a splendid piece in this week's Spectator magazine where you correctly highlight that while our politicians are intent on impoverishing our country by pursuing net zero emissions, China, Russia and India are doing nothing. So David, while they grow stronger, we become weaker, don't we?
We do indeed, and you must wonder what our politicians are up to. Some of them we know from what they do after they've been in politics, and there were one or two even doing it while they were in politics. They are looking for very well-paid positions with foreign powers, with corporations which come from foreign powers. But it is very difficult to understand how they, in good conscience, do these things, because the intelligent ones must realise that what they are doing is going to lead to a complete disaster in this country. We're going to have such excessive costs that is going to damage what's left of industry in the country, and then they'll move on to agriculture. We are really in a difficult position, and they're still prepared to allow the sale of our fossil fuels to those who are preaching to us and saying that we're doing terrible things.